Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film The Drama, and in the second half, I'm going to review Lee Cronin's The Mummy. So starting off with The Drama, I know it's a bit late to this movie, but I figured better late than never. This is a film that I will purposefully be very vague about, just for the sake of anyone who wants to watch it and doesn't know much about it already. I think it's one of those movies that, I think it's just if you go in without expecting much or knowing much, it's a much more impactful experience for both good and bad, I suppose. But this film is by the same director as the film Dream Scenario from a few years back, which I really enjoyed with Nick Cage, and it's just kind of like this commentary on cancel culture and that, this guy who's appearing in everyone's dreams and everyone hates him all of a sudden. It's a really funny movie. I really enjoyed that one a lot. But now we're getting his new film, and also I should note this director made a few short films I had seen a long time ago in film school, and I don't know if maybe my taste just wasn't good back then, or maybe they were just bad shorts. I don't know. I didn't really like his short films, so I was never expecting much out of Dream Scenario. I was like, oh, I'm probably not gonna vibe with this. I just didn't really like his short films. Ended up really enjoying that film. And that got me pretty excited for The Drama, even though I didn't like his shorts, because I was like, maybe this guy, I don't know, maybe he's gotten better. Maybe I'm just vibing more on his level now. Or maybe he's like a Yorgos Lanthimos, which most people love, and I really don't know how to feel about sometimes. Sometimes I really like his work, sometimes I think it's not for me. Anyway, though, going back to The Drama, both Dream Scenario and The Drama have very dark and uncomfortable senses of humor. That won't be for everyone, but if it vibes with you, you'll really enjoy it. Again, shorts didn't vibe with me, his features did. But the movie stars Robert Pattinson and Zendaya. They are really great actors. Both, I think they're probably some of the only actors nowadays that really attract people to their films. They're very recognizable. I feel like people will want to see their movies. And Zendaya especially has been on an excellent role lately. She's been really, really good. But this movie starts off as a traditional rom-com of sorts and fairly quickly develops a more unique identity once the real plot kicks in, which I have to say is not what you'd ever expect. And in very vague terms, the plot of this movie is that a couple that's about to get married begins having some doubts about their relationship after they reveal some hidden truths, and I promise you that the direction this movie goes in is something that you would never in a million years guess. And from this point on, you'll either find the movie very funny and entertaining, or you'll be so uncomfortable by it that you'll want it to end immediately. And I could see it going either way for people. I know people who have hated this movie, and I know people who have loved it, so it could really go either way. And there probably should be a trigger warning on this movie, because if you get triggered easily, you'll probably want to avoid it because it's going to be very triggering. It is inherently a controversial film, so just know that going in. But there isn't a trigger warning for it, so this review will be one for anyone listening. Once again, if you do get triggered easily, probably avoid this movie. It's very, the subject matter in it is it's wild. But if you think you can handle this movie, I think it's worth seeing because it is very enjoyable. It's a very enjoyable film. I don't think I'd go as far as to say I love the movie or anything, but I do really like it and have found that the more I've thought about it, the better it is. When I first walked out of it, I was like, that was pretty good. And the more I've given it some thought, I'm like, that actually might be a very good movie. I have to rewatch it to find that out because some of my issues do have to do kind of with pacing and stuff. Not necessarily the thematics of anything. So I could see myself rewatching this movie and still having the same problems, but I could also see myself also enjoying it a little more. But it is a good movie. It's a very well made movie. Pattinson and Zendaya are great as you would expect. There are a lot of scenes where you can see exactly what they're feeling. I've seen some people online saying they have no chemistry together. I would argue that maybe that's part of the point. I don't think it's no chemistry, but it's it's a little bit of an off-putting chemistry where you're I don't really think this is the ideal couple, but let's just see what happens here. And you can kind of see why they're together, but also why they may not belong together, if that makes sense. The script is very strong here, though. There's a lot of nuance in there, and the movie is surprisingly rich thematically. Like, there's a lot going on under the surface there that, like, if you really do take the time to, I don't want to say analyze because that sounds like homework, but if you take the time to just kind of look back on the movie and, like, the scenes, the individual scenes, and, like, what happens in them, kind of what they mean in the grand scheme of things, I think you'll find that there is a lot there, surprisingly. Like, there's a lot to just kind of go over and a lot to think about with, the way characters see other characters and the way some characters see themselves. And I think there was really strong stuff there. I think there's a lot to think about. But kind of what I was saying before is that the movie does have some pacing issues. The film is repetitive by nature, and it feels like, and I think you should leave skit, that the Tim Robinson Show on Netflix. Very funny, and I actually do think, when I was watching this movie, I was like, if Tim Robinson was in this movie, I think it would have been like a 10 out of 10 comedy, but it's still funny as is. Anyway, though, it feels like one of those skits that's usually like 5 or 10 minutes that, gets extended for like an hour and a half. That's kind of how it felt to me. But within that runtime, you begin to see the characters and situations a bit differently. There are a lot of blurry gray lines between characters and this moral question of who is right and who is wrong. That comes up, and there are a lot of other moral questions in this movie about hypocrisy and at what point is someone a bad person, and at what point, is someone defined by their worst mistakes. And I think there's a lot there. Like, at what point does, doing something versus thinking about something, when does that come into factor it? Like, it's a very complex situation here. And I think this movie will get you talking and thinking about it quite a bit. I mean, this is probably one of the most, like, memorable movies of the year so far, just in that regard of, like, making you really think about what you just watched and making you want to have a conversation about it. There's a lot to unpack here. I really could go on and on about what this movie has to say because it is a very layered film. By the end in particular of the film, the whole message really hits home and kind of comes full circle in a way. I thought it was a great final scene and very touching, kind of after we've been on this like very comedic journey, I guess. The movie does take a minute to just really just hammer in the emotions at the end. And I thought that was very effective, and it was one of the best scenes in the movie for sure. As for issues, a lot of it comes down to that repetition I keep mentioning. After some time, the film feels like it's running out of steam, and in the third act, it begins to regain that steam again and do something a bit different, but for a lot of that second act in particular, the movie kind of goes in circles as it shows the same thing but at different scenarios and circumstances. I found that it was just getting a little bit too repetitive for my liking. I was just, there are only so many times I could take the same thing happening before I'm just like, all right, let's change it up a little bit, because it did just feel like an extended skit to me, and that's where I'm not sure how the movie will go on rewatch, like if I'll feel that the same way, but I would have liked if the movie just did a little more changing it up in the middle points, especially before we get to that third act. I also found that the score was a little too distracting at points for me. It's a very simple score, and it's a fairly memorable score. Like, it's a well-made score, but it's also a little overpowering to me. I think it kind of takes away from some of the scenes a little bit because it's just, like, it's weirdly, like, subtle, but it's in your face at the same time. Like, I don't know, it was interesting. But I don't know if it totally vibed for me, but I don't know, it was a little much. Another note, though, is that the pacing to me feels a bit all over the place. Like, in some ways, the movie feels a little too long for my liking. Like, the repetition kind of gets to you, and it stretches the story a little too thin. But then, on the other hand, I think there are places where this movie, really could have developed more and spent a little more time exploring some other things here. So maybe could have done a little bit of cutting, a little bit of extending in certain places. I don't really know what the right balance would have been, but the pacing is probably my biggest complaint with the film as a whole. But all in all, the drama is a very enjoyable film. It's nothing like what I expected it to be from the trailers, and I say that as a compliment for me. As I said, there will be an audience who absolutely despises this movie and finds it too uncomfortable and in poor taste for them, and I think that's a very valid criticism. I think if you find that, I totally get that complaint. For me, though, I thought it worked. I thought it was a very dark sense of humor. Dark senses of humor are one of my favorites. And this movie is a very dark sense of humor, and I could see it rubbing some people the wrong way. But for me, I did get a kick out of it. I think there's also a lot of important commentary in the film that does kind of like elevate it a little bit. It doesn't just feel like dark humor for dark humor, like it actually has something to say. So that was good, I thought, and it made me like the movie a little more. Um, but there will be other people who watch this movie and find it, genius. They'll think it's like brilliant, and I could see that too. I could totally see people thinking that. To me, there's a lot to like here. It's not a film that will probably be my favorite of the year or anything like that, but it's a movie that will get you thinking and talking about it no matter what side you're on, and I think that's super important. I think movies should do that, a lot. Like, we should be talking about movies. Like, sometimes I'll watch a movie and it'll just go in one ear and out the other. I mean, that's what happened with the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I just watched it, I didn't really want to think about it anymore, and it's like when people put so much time into a film, you want to think about it. You want to take the time to really give it the attention it deserves, not just absorb it and just spit it out. So I really enjoyed the film. I think it's a good movie that'll get you talking, and I would give it a B. Maybe a B plus on rewatch. I'd have to see. But right now I'm going to stick with a B. It's a great date night movie. Go see it with your partner, but be prepared for a pretty lengthy conversation with them afterwards. It's definitely gonna spark up some good talking points. So, yeah, go check out the drama. Alright, and next up is Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Yes, I did say Lee Cronin's name in front of the film. That's partly just how they've been marketing the film, and I don't know if Lee Cronin's the one who really wanted that, or if that was a Blumhouse choice, or if that was just really meant to separate the movie from Brendan Fraser's Mummy movie. But in any case, this is the name of the film. That's literally how it comes up when you watch the movie. It says Lee Cronin's The Mummy. And basically, this is a horror movie, a horror mummy movie, made by the guy who did Evil Dead Rise. I'm not really sure if this is like a case that really justifies having the director's name in front of the title, because really he's only made a couple movies, I think, and I don't really think anyone knows him by name alone. So, like, if they see Lee Cronin's The Mummy, they're going to be like, who's Lee Cronin? Like, who is this Lee Cronin guy? I don't know who this is. Like, Steven Spielberg, I know who that is. Who's Lee Cronin? So, I think, like, it's a little bit confusing to me. It's a bit of a weird marketing choice. I know they were debating changing the title entirely. That was a rumor anyway, to, like, The Resurrected or something like that. And, I mean, you could have. I think The Mummy is a more appealing title to audiences. Like, it's also just a better title in general, I think. But they could have probably figured out something else. I don't really know the whole deal with that, but that's a tangent for another thing. I don't know why I'm going on so long about it. But anyway, this is a disturbing movie. It is gross. It will get under your skin just like Evil Dead Rise did. Like, that's a movie that is a very gross out horror movie, and this movie is similar to that, in that it really does have a lot of gore and blood and stuff. But also, there are a lot of rumors of test screenings that took place with this film, and supposedly they went very poorly. I don't really know to what extent that's true or not. But now that I've seen the movie, I think it honestly has more to do with people probably just not being able to handle the movie itself than anything to do with the filmmaking or the craft of it. Even though I do think the movie is very bad. Like, I don't really like this movie at all, but I feel like it's not unwatchable in the sense that it's a bad movie. It's unwatchable in the sense that, like, this movie will definitely disturb some people and really make them, like, want to cover their eyes, because it really does get that graphic at times. I mean, obviously, it'll vary for people. Like, there are some people who watch, like, the Terrifier movies and stuff, and this will probably not faze them at all. But if you're, like, a pretty new horror person and you just watch, like, The Conjuring and stuff, like, this will definitely be a very big step up in the gore and blood department. So, keep that in mind. So I will tell you, though, when it comes to the direction, production design, the cinematography, visual effects, and scares, this movie is well made. Like, I feel like there are a lot of well made parts to this film that it's impossible for me to think, like, really test screenings could have gone that badly for that reason. And I was very hopeful in the first act of this film, especially, that this movie would deliver. I was really hoping for that because it has a fairly promising setup with some mystery, heart and a good story. Like, you can kind of see, like, where this movie could be really good. The movie is basically about a family who has their young daughter suddenly go missing, which I feel like is one of the scariest things that could happen to any parent. And several years later, she turns back up again, but she's not the same anymore. Like, she's definitely, she looks different, she acts different. It's a good idea for a film, I think. It's kind of like Pet Sematary, but uses some mummified visuals to kind of get it across, and therefore the mummy title. But I think the main issue that haunts this movie to me is the bad writing, and I could see a lot of people having a problem with this movie. I don't think, though, based on the reactions I've heard, like, audiences really dislike the writing that much, but for me, that's, like, the big deal breaker here. A lot of my biggest issues with the script are these moments that simply don't make any sense if you take a second and think about them. Like, there are definitely people out there who don't mind horror movies not really making a lot of sense, and those people will probably get a kick out of it if you're just looking to be spooked out for around 2.5 hours and see some disturbing visuals. But, to me, there's only so much disbelief I can suspend before it gets kind of frustrating, and I'm like, all right, come on, can we, like, actually, like, address this, or can we do something here? Like, can we not make stupid decisions all the time? And there's just a lot here that doesn't make any sense on paper. Like, and I'm not even talking about things like, oh, how did the girl survive in a sarcophagus for so many years without food or water? Or how did that spell even work? Like, those things, the main parts of the story, like, I'm willing to suspend disbelief for a lot of that. I feel like, with me, I'm willing to, if you establish some rules or whatever, and you're just making a movie, like, it's a mummy movie. I'm not expecting perfect logic here. Whatever, she survived, that's fine. But I'm talking about smaller details, like, throughout the film. Like, why is nobody reacting to their kid taking out all their teeth? Like, is that not bothering anyone? Is that not disturbing anyone? Like, stuff like that. And maybe, I could see the argument, like, why does that bother you? Like, if it happened once or twice, I probably would let it go, but it happens in, like, every other scene, and it adds up. It really, like, takes a toll on you after a while, where you're just like, I can't even suspend my disbelief anymore because I keep getting taken out of the movie over these really stupid things. Like, throughout the movie, I'm just like, why is nobody saying, maybe we should go get a doctor and get some professional help? Like, no, let's just keep the daughter here and, just see what happens with her. Like, she's acting very weird. She's having, like, these tics and, making all these weird noises, and she's attacking people. But no, it's fine. Like, let's just leave it be. Just very dumb writing to me, and I just couldn't get past that for a lot of the film. I understand that a lot of this would mean that the film would simply end quicker if we actually made these smart choices. I understand that sometimes a movie has to make up reasons something can't happen, so the movie could go on longer, and I get that, I totally do. But this movie makes no attempt at that. It doesn't even bother to address anything it's doing. It doesn't take the time to, like, even try to say, like, no, we're not going to a doctor because X. Like, we're not going to go do this because we don't have the money, or we don't have the means of doing so. Like, we can't get out of the house for some reason. Like, it doesn't even try to make up a reason. It just doesn't acknowledge it a lot of the time. And that was really, really frustrating to me. And again, it doesn't happen on, like, just a few occasions. It's literally the entire movie. So that got really draining after a while. And I could basically go on a spoiler rant in detail about everything that bothered me. But honestly, if I did, I'm pretty sure it would be even longer than the movie itself. But even if you take that issue away, like, even if you remove that one obstacle, there are still a lot of others I have with this film. One is that it doesn't really feel like a mummy movie. Like, after the setup, which at least has a solid attempt at that, it kind of takes place in, like, Egypt, I think. It turns more into an Exorcist or Evil Dead type of movie, which to me was kind of disappointing. I really was hoping for more of a mummy movie, didn't fully get that. And it comes across like, while making Evil Dead Rise, Lee Cronin had this epiphany of, like, what if we made a movie where instead of the mother being the evil possessed one, it's the child? And it feels like he just ran with that and made this movie. But at that point, I say just make another Evil Dead movie, or make an Exorcist movie, or some original other demonic entity movie, because making this mummy movie just feels like a waste of a premise. And, it's just kind of like, he just slapped some mummy stuff on the movie. It doesn't feel like it was like really built into the script or the idea much. And it's just a waste to associate this movie as a mummy film when in reality it doesn't do nearly enough to justify that title. And on another note, the characters here are all pretty one-dimensional. Like, you get that they care about each other as a family, you get the feeling of loss that they have, but at the same time, I don't really feel like they had much of a connection at all. I didn't really know anything about them as people. I wasn't fully invested in their characters at any point to feel the full impact when bad things happen to them, which I think that's like one of the worst things that could happen in a horror movie. If I don't feel for the people, where bad things are happening to them, then I can't really get scared for them. So that kind of took away the impact of things. Some of the dialogue here is also pretty rough and felt kind of tonally confused to me. This movie has a lot of attempts at humor where there probably shouldn't be any, or if there should be humor, maybe it should be a different type. The pacing of the movie is a real issue for me. It spends a lot of time on this subplot of an investigation of what really happened to this little girl, Katie. And, every time that happened, I was like, let's just go back to the main story with the family. This feels like it could have been, a nice, tight 90-minute movie, 100 minutes max. But instead, this movie is almost 2.5 hours because we keep having to cut back to this other stuff. And it really just feels like it goes on way too long. Maybe it would have worked if they actually did it right, I guess. If they actually made the investigation really intriguing and made it hard to predict what was happening. But the issue at hand is that the beginning of the movie basically gives the answer away minus a few details. And it's not a spoiler, by the way. This movie makes it incredibly obvious. It's not hidden or anything. So if you know anything about mummy movies and you know anything about what you're watching, then I feel the answer is incredibly obvious. And when you know the answer to a question the movie's been asking for a good 90 minutes or so, it gets kind of boring and you're just come on, let's go already. Let's get to the mummy stuff. And then my last issue with the film is another pretty big one, but it's all in the ending. Basically, you get to the climax of the movie and it feels like it's over. And in that moment, I was like, all right, whatever. It's a fine ending. It's not emotionally satisfying or anything, but at least it's an ending to the movie that's been kind of set up the whole time. It's at least, it's a fine ending. But then it keeps going. You get this follow-up scene that feels kind of like an epilogue. And again, it was a scene that didn't really make sense at all given the information we had earlier, unless I missed something. It just feels like a weird detail that maybe they overlooked. And then it keeps going again. And this scene is the real ending of the movie, but it doesn't feel like the ending it was supposed to be. It doesn't feel like the ending Lee Cronin originally intended, and because of that, it feels like a cop-out. It feels like a reshoot. It was like nobody was confident in the ending they had, so they decided to make a new one, so that way Lee Cronin could have his cake and eat it too. But I think it's a really cheap ending. Given the way things play out, the rest of the movie, this ending doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't sit right with me. I'd argue it feels even less satisfying than if the movie ended several minutes earlier. But I was really hoping to enjoy Lee Cronin's The Mummy. It's been a while since we've had a mummy film, and I was excited to see what could be done with it in the horror space. The last bunch with Brendan Fraser, and we had the one with Tom Cruise. Those are more action horror, I guess. There's a little bit of horror, but it's not really a horror movie. To get a full-on horror mummy movie was pretty exciting, but I thought they could have done a lot more with it. I mean, I will give the movie that it's very gnarly and gross and has some great practical effects. It did get under my skin a bunch of times and made me uncomfortable. So it did its job on that front. And as I said, Lee Cronin is a good director who has a clear vision of his movie. It doesn't look like a movie made by a studio. It looks like someone made a movie, but the problem here is that the script is so weak that it takes down the whole movie with it. So because of that, I'm going to have to give Lee Cronin's The Mummy a D+. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd, the MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.